Good morning, everyone. My name is Marie-Lise, and I'm with the University of Rhode Island's Inner Space Center. Right now, I'm coming to you live from the main lab aboard the research vessel Endeavour. We're currently located over the wreck of U-853 off the coast of Block Island. I want to remind all of our viewers at home, especially our VIP viewers, that you can ask questions of us during these shows and we will answer them for you. We have a whole team of scientists here that would love to answer your questions. So joining me now is Dwight Coleman, the director of the Inner Space Center and also the chief scientist on board. Thanks for joining us, Dwight. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what we're going to be seeing today?
Sure. Thanks, Marie-Elise. Well, welcome, everybody. So we're very excited to be hosting this live broadcast from the research vessel Endeavour. And right now we're off the coast of Block Island and off the coast of southern Rhode Island. We're right on top of the wreckage of the U-boat 853. So it's a fascinating story that we'll get into the history of why this shipwreck ended up where it is today. So it's a very exciting time because we're diving the ROVs for the first time. And a ROV is a remotely operated vehicle. So we have done a couple of practice dives, but this is the first time we're actually diving on the U-boat. So it's quite exciting. So we have a multidisciplinary team of scientists and engineers from the University of Rhode Island, and we have a couple of teachers as well from Scituate High School and Coventry High School out with us too. So we're doing an educational program and of course the live broadcast and the live dives. So I want to just set the stage a little bit. We're just east of Block Island and south of Point Judith, really. If you drew a straight line due south from Bonnet Shores and a straight line due east from the tip of Block Island, you'd be at the U-boat, and that's where we are right now. And it's interesting because it's a very popular sunny Saturday on Labor Day weekend, and there's all sorts of boating traffic out there and lots of people, I'm sure, arriving on the ferry out to Block Island. And little do they know that there was a major battle here 70 years ago that sank this German U-boat. So the German U-boats were on patrol, and they really had a mission to attack commercial vessels up and down the coast of the United States. And this particular U-boat had a mission from Virginia to Halifax, Nova Scotia, to basically be on patrol, be on lookout, and torpedo any commercial ships that they saw. And they did attack several ships and sank several ships. And one of the very last battles, Atlantic battles of World War II, that was engaging the U-boats was right here off the shores of Rhode Island. So it's just an unbelievable story. The U-boat came up and sank a commercial ship called the Black Point, right off about 4 miles off of Point Judith. And it sank the Black Point. Several people perished when the Black Point was torpedoed. And then the boat basically got caught, of course. An observer, a Coast Guard observer from Point Judith, recognized the Black Point and then also observed the explosion. And so immediately the word got out that this ship was sunk by a torpedo. They didn't know exactly what happened, but they assumed that it was a German U-boat, and 2 ships went out to then locate the U-boat and attack it. And this is the Moberly and the Atherton. And what they did was they used their sonar devices that were on the ship to try to locate the U-boat, get soundings to the U-boat, and they were actually able to listen to the noise of the U-boat and locate it. So they knew that the submarine was hiding nearby, and they dropped a ton of depth charges on it, these hedgehogs, and they deployed these hedgehogs trying to attack and sink this U-boat. And indeed, they were successful, but they weren't completely sure they were successful at first. What they did was they did observe all the explosions, but when that happened, it created a froth in the sea, and they weren't able to see what was going on. But eventually, late the evening of May 5th, 1945, they started to observe things floating up to the surface. They saw some wood. The U-boats had a wooden deck. They saw a life jacket, I believe, and even one of the sailors' hats, perhaps. And then they started to see an oil slick. So they were pretty sure that they were able to damage the boat. They weren't sure they were able to sink the boat, but they were pretty sure they damaged it. And it wasn't until the next morning, the next light, that the U.S. forces sent 2 blimps out to do a reconnaissance of it, and there's an oil slick picture. They actually observed an oil slick, so they really think they had damaged the ship bad enough that they could then go in and really do extensive damage to it. And the other ships came in, and including a destroyer called the Erickson, and they dropped more depth charges on it and just really hammered the U-boat. And the U-boat is, and then when they saw a larger oil slick, and were pretty sure that the U-boat was sunk, they confirmed it with a Navy diver who actually went down and dove on the wreck really immediately after it sank, and then confirmed that that it was indeed the U-boat. They identified it as the U-853, and then the news got out that they had sunk the German U-boat. And all 55 German sailors that were on that U-boat perished in this battle. And so this was an incredible Battle of Point Judith that occurred around May 5th, May 6th, 1945, a little over 70 years ago, right off the coast of Rhode Island. In the waning days of World War II, there was actually a ceasefire ordered, and 2 days later they signed to end the German portion of World War II. And so just an amazing story of history right off the Rhode Island coast. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing. We're coming in on this shipwreck, and there's actually an ROV video feed on the screen right now next to us, and there is 2 cameras on the ROV. So you see the green water. It's very poor visibility. So we really have to rely on our sonars, and in the lower left is the sonar image, and that's a scanning sonar that's basically attached to the ROV and reaching out with sound energy and getting a reflection. So it's sort of like radar is looking at a storm system, a weather radar. So it's like a front coming through or a thunderstorm coming through, except we're on water now and we're using sonar instead of radar. We're reaching out in front of the vehicle and getting scans on the U-boat. So this is the profile. It looks like we're coming in on the side of the German U-boat as it's laying on the seafloor. And we have pretty good coordinates on it because it's a very popular scuba diving site. And it's actually been mapped too. And I think we have a couple of images that we could show that one is a multi-beam sonar image of the wreck lying on the bottom. So this wreck has been charted. A lot of folks are interested in shipwrecks because they're obstacles on the seafloor, and they need to be put on the charts because they could be structures that snag fishermen's nets. They could be obstructions to navigation, etc. So the Thomas Jefferson is a NOAA ship that went out and collected some multi-beam sonar data and mapped the depths. And now the chart can actually, modern versions of the chart can actually have that most shallowest point, which is the conning tower sticking up on the chart as that depth for the chart, and an obstruction or a wreck symbol that indicates that this feature is here. Then we can also use technology called side scan sonar, and we have a nice side scan sonar image of this wreck that basically gives us a reveal of the backscatter, essentially. So acoustic, instead of measuring depth like the previous image showed, this image shows acoustic backscatter. So you get what's called a shadow, an acoustic shadow, and that's really what we're looking at in profile here. And you can see the conning tower, and you can see the profile of the wreck. So we have this nice imagery from side scan sonar, a multi-beam sonar, and now we're collecting our own imagery from the scanning sonar on the ROV as we approach this wreck. Now, I want to mention that it's quite difficult doing what we're doing. The research vessel Endeavor that we're on now is not equipped with dynamic positioning. So they're doing what we call live boating. So the captain of the ship, who's up on the bridge now, is actually driving the boat to keep us close to the wreck as possible. So they can't use a computer controlled series of thrusters to maintain position according to a GPS fix. They have to rely on the rudder and the steering capabilities of the ship and the propulsion of the ship. Fortunately, we have a very good bow thruster, so we can kick the bow over. And we have to play a game, really, with the wind and the current and where the ROV is deployed over the side of the ship, and navigate very carefully as we approach the wreck with the ROV. So in the outside shot, you can see we have one of the ROV team, Matt Perkins, out there, who's a graduate student at URI. He's tending the tether, and we have a buoy on the tether. You can be able to see the orange float that's on the tether. Underneath that orange float is where the ROV is. So we have to manhandle this tether and basically keep everything a safe distance from the ship, and also keep approaching where we're going on the wreck itself. So this is basically how we're navigating. We know the position of the shipwreck, we know the position of the Endeavor, and we also know how our tether is going on top of the water and underwater. And that's all part of dance that we're conducting here to navigate our way into the shipwreck. So it's challenging, to say the least, but we're coming in close, and hopefully by the end of the broadcast we'll see some live images from the wreck itself. But like I mentioned before, this is a very popular scuba diving target, and I know that we have a scuba diver on the phone with us, Bill Palmer. So Marie-Elise, would you like to introduce Bill, and maybe he can add to the conversation? You can ask him some questions.
Sure. Can you hear me, Bill?
Yes, I can.
So I've heard that you have some anecdotal stories about some of the crew members on both the Black Point and U-853.
We have a lot of stories about them.
Would you like to share with us some of your favorites?
Sure. Let me start with the 853 and the Battle of the Atlantic. And I can read an excerpt from my book as soon as I find my glasses, which sort of hits home. And the first is from Sir Winston Churchill. And he said, the only thing that ever really frightened me during the U-boat peril, I was even more anxious about this battle than I had been about the glorious fight called the Battle of Britain. And he went on to say, battle might be won or lost, enterprises succeed or miscarry, territories might be gained or acquitted, but dominating all our power to carry on the war, or for that matter, even keep ourselves alive, was our mastery of the ocean routes and the free approaches to our ports. Now, Admiral Karl Dönitz, he also said, for months past, the enemy has rendered the U-boat ineffective. He has achieved this object not through tactics or strategy, but through his superiority in the field of science. This finds its expression in the modern battle weapon detection. By this means, he has torn our sole offensive weapon in the war against the Anglo-Saxons from our hands. And if we stop sending out our U-boats, the enemy would start escorting its convoys. And as it is, we know that our U-boats are pinning down approximately 2 million enemy personnel in warships and repair shops, quite apart from the time they lose to having to operate the convoy systems at all. So we must keep our U-boats at sea, even if they never sink another ship. Their mere presence alone constitutes success for us. So that in itself sort of, talks about the Battle of the Atlantic. And what few people realize is that during the war, the German U-boats operated so close to shore that they could see the cars passing on the highways, the children playing in the playgrounds. And a few people realize how close they were. Now, the 853, the 853 was a Type 9C40 U-boat. It was one of the larger U-boats, most prolific being a Type 7. And the former captain of that boat, Captain Helmut Cermers, he was wounded. He sustained 25 wounds during weather duty. And Captain Fronsdorf went to visit him just prior to leaving Norway on the last patrol. And Summers said to him, the war is nearly at an end. Do not be frivolous with the crew. They're all good boys. Make sure you bring them home. Fronsdorf assured Summers that he would. And today they sit in 126 feet of water just off Block Island, still waiting to come home.
So I'd like to give our viewers a little bit more background on who you are. We like to think of you as the local expert on U-853. How many times have you dived this wreck?
Oh my God in heaven. I started my career, so to speak, looking for the 853. It was back in 1973. That was the first time I dove the 853. And at the time, there were no charter boats or anybody going out there. As a matter of fact, electronics were very, very primitive. So it was extremely difficult to find. And that sort of launched my career. I bought a boat so that I could go out there, and then a friend of mine suggested running a charter boat so that I could afford the money to buy some primitive electronics. And off I went. I had bought a LOREN, which stood for a long-range navigational aid. And in the winter, on my supper table, I practiced operating it so that I could be prepared once the weather broke and I could go out there and search for it. And the first dive that I made on it was in May of 1973. And the last dive I made on it was approximately 2 weeks ago. So over time, I have no idea as to how many dives I've made on it. Hundreds, literally hundreds.
So I don't know if you can hear the excitement in the room here right now, or if you're watching. We actually just reached the wreck site of U853.
Yeah, we just came in on the middle portion of the wreck, so I think we're sort of near the conning tower.
It's you. But I'm sure everybody must be ecstatic.
Yes, we're quite thrilled here, Bill. Thanks so much for your commentary, and please stand by for more questions, because we have a lot of questions coming in.
Because,
So it's pretty exciting because we're actually with the ROV on the wreck for the first time, and we, like I was explaining earlier, we had some technical challenges so far during this mission. Yesterday was a weather day, so we weren't able to work here. We were really too exposed to weather, and like I explained, we were live boating the ship, so it's very difficult to hold station. And one of the questions that came in is, why can't we just anchor over the wreck, or what are the hazards associated with anchoring over the wreck? So and what we don't want to do is anchor and have another anchor line or have another obstacle in the water for us to have to navigate around. So that would be very challenging for us to work around an anchor, be limited in our capability to maneuver the ship. So the captain and mates on the bridge are very good at handling this ship, and the weather conditions are perfect, and we're working against current and working against the wind very nicely. So it's actually a more favorable situation for us to be live boating than actually at anchor. When you're set at anchor, you're subject to what the wind and the current does, and you don't have the propulsion of the ship to position you. So it would be more difficult, I think, to be anchored and also have that other obstacle in the water that we have to watch out for, and that is the anchor chain and the anchor line. So that's why we're not anchored right now. We are live boating, tending the tether off the side of the ship, like I explained. We have a beautiful sonar image of the ship. We're right in the middle of the wreck. And I'm not sure exactly what feature we were just looking at, but we're right in the middle of the ship. And I know that the one of the depth charges did damage to the forward portion of the section of the hull. So we have the conning tower really right in the middle of the ship, and then we have the bow of the ship at one end. And it's a large ship, more than 200 feet long. And so we're in the middle section, which would have been really the largest section of the ship, and also the part of the shipwreck that, or the U-boat that stands proud of the seafloor the most. So that's where we're at right now, trying to figure out exactly where we are on the wreck, looking at the fish that are swimming around, looking for the first time at the portion of the hull that does look damaged to me. Perhaps this is one of the places where scuba divers can enter the wreck. I'm not sure. Maybe we can take a look inside and a look around to try to get a better perspective and better context about where we're at. So I believe there's some other questions coming in. Marie-Elise?
There is. We had another question come in on our live chat asking, what are those lasers for? And are they lasers or something else?
Yeah, they actually are lasers. Great question. So we have 2 lasers, and they're parallel, and they're fixed at a distance of 10 centimeters. So this is 6 centimeters. I was just corrected. I'm used to working with other ROVs that have other lasers. So these are fixed distance at 6 centimeters apart. So this gives us a scale. So this is a great tool for us to understand basically how to measure things on the ship and on the shipwreck. And so because these lasers are always parallel, the ends of them will always reflect off an object that's and indicate a distance of 6 centimeters. So it's a great archaeological tool for measuring objects on shipwrecks. It's also a good observational tool for us to focus and point at different objects and look at the size of different objects. So it's a great scientific tool for measuring underwater, really. More questions?
We do. We have another one that came in, and the question is, why is the water so green?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are definitely in green water. So we're in coastal water where there's a lot of marine life, basically. There's plankton and algae that grows in the water. We're in a very productive time of year, late summer. There's blooms that have been occurring really since spring. And most coastal waters circulate with the tides and the currents and the rivers that flow into the coastal waters. We're in Rhode Island Sound, Block Island Sound area, so all the water is mixing and churning through here, very productive, nutrient-rich, lots of fish, lots of marine life, and what we call green water. So when we get out deeper, we get into what we call blue water, and you will have much better visibility. But this is the reality of it, and we have a lot of ambient light. So most of the light that is allowing us to see with our cameras is the sunlight penetrating down this deep. And so that is the color is the color of sunlight reflecting off the water, refracting through the water here is green in color. So that's why it's green. Are there more questions?
There are. We had another question. This one might be best answered by Bill. And the question is, are you ever concerned when you're diving on a new site that's never been explored?
I wouldn't say I'm concerned. I'm excited, because one never knows what they're going to find or see. So yeah, if it's a new site, yeah, I'm very excited about it.
I've heard actually a few scuba divers have died on this site, so it is very dangerous. Have you ever had any close calls?
I have not. You know, it all boils down to experience. And experience is something that you just can't buy or you just can't find. It's a matter of going out and doing it, being in the company of other people, sometimes even more experienced, and learning for them. Learning how to combat an adverse situation, such as, should you get hung up, what do you do? Well, can't panic. I have to analyze the situation and then take measures. So that's the whole thing. A lot of the people that have died on the H-53 are people that did not have, in my opinion, the experience or the proper equipment. You know, a sad story. There was a person who died on the H-53, and his family asked me if I would spread his ashes out there. And I said, sure. So I took the family. We went out to the H-53. And there was two buoys on the wreck. One occupied by a sailboat. Sailboat had a sign on the back, long diving, be up in 10 minutes. So I grabbed the other buoy and I sat there. Then I saw a diver splash on the surface, swam to his boat, and then went down the anchor line. But when he finally surfaced, I told him I had oxygen on board in case he needed it. And he said, no, we're just out here trying to get some experience. And I said to him, this is not the place where you get the experience. Sail beneath Southeast Light. There's an oil tanker and 30 feet of water. There's where you start, not out here. What happened was, that diver was diving with his partner. He lost sight of him, panicked, and rocketed to the surface. Now, that could have been tragic. He could have got an air embolism, and he would have been dead in a matter of minutes. So, yep. There's no substitute for experience.
Wow, that's very scary. So, what does this wreck mean? I've heard that it might be a benchmark for local divers.
Yeah, you know, some people do not know what they're going to experience. Our waters are nutrient-rich, and the visibility at times is less than desired. You know, I'd say on the U-boat it's probably at 10, 15 feet at most. Now, there was a boat that went out there, a small charter boat out of Rhode Island. He had taken some divers out. One of the divers jumps into the water, swims up to the anchor line, which in that case was a buoy line, swims back to the boat and says, we're not on it. Well, the captain looks at his machine, looks at his GPS. He said, yeah, we're on it. Here it is. And he said, why do you say we're not on it? And the diver said, I can't see it. He expected to be able to see the wreck lying beneath him in 130 feet of water. And that tells me he has no experience and should not be diving it.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Bill. I think we're going to hand it over now to Dwight, who's going to talk to the ROV pilots.
Yeah, great. So we actually have in the lower right quadrant of this quad display that you're looking at the ROV team. So from left to right, this is Mike Brennan. He's the navigator. He's also a marine archaeologist. We have Stephen Licht. He's the chief of the ROV operation and basically talking to the deck, communicating with the people managing the tether, and communicating with the navigator to keep the ship and the ROV in the right position. And Jordan, on the right, is a graduate student in the Department of Ocean Engineering at URI, and he's the ROV pilot. So he's driving the ROV. And so this team of three folks are all working together to basically try to make this dive a success. You see in the lower left the scanning sonar, and that's giving us a beautiful image of the wreck. So we're looking at several tens of meters across in front of the ROV, and this is what's aiding us to navigate effectively around the ship. So, Stephen, will you be able to take a question?
Sure.
So, just explain a little bit to the audience about some of the challenges of what we're up against in approaching this shipwreck. Towards the mic.
The biggest challenge we have.
Towards the mic.
The two biggest challenges we have are first keeping the boat at the surface in the right position with respect to the ROV. There's wind, there's current, and we don't have what's called dynamic positioning on this ship. So it's essentially manual positioning. There's someone up on the bridge trying to keep the tether in the right position. Sorry, I'm just trying to pay attention to what's going on. Well, the other problem we have is visibility. We are, based on our sonar image, we're about 2 to 3 meters from the wreck, which is dead ahead of us, but we can't see it. But we have to kind of hopscotch along the bottom until we get to within a meter or two of it, and then we can see a very small portion of it. So the visibility really hampers us in that. Fortunately, we do have the sonar, which gives us a sense of where the wreck is with respect to us, the whole wreck.
Right.
All right.
Thank you. And so in the sonar scan, we're actually looking at range rings of 2 meters. And so that nearest reflection that we see, the nearest part of the target, is about 3 meters away. So that's telling us that the ROV is still 3 meters, or about 9-10 feet away from the shipwreck. So again, we're getting lined up, making sure that the tether is being handled very carefully, and we have plenty of room to navigate back towards the wreck. So that's why we're having difficulty seeing it. 10 feet visibility, we can't quite see the wreck with the cameras that we have on the ROV. So we'll get a little bit closer in a few minutes, and we'll continue this dive for a few hours. So we're hoping that the audience sticks around, and it's pretty exciting. So we're all going to be here.
So we had another question come in on the VIP chat, and I think it's a student wondering how they get involved in this type of research.
Yeah, that's great. In fact, maybe you can answer that question because you're a student.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
So I knew since I was in high school that the Inner Space Center was the place that I wanted to be. So I went to URI so that I could potentially be a part of it. And I was taking geological oceanography with Steve Carey, and he was nice enough to introduce me to you and to get me involved. So that's how I got here.
But it's basically students that have an interest in science, in oceanography, of course, and engineering. But there's also students here that are part of our film team. And some of them have graduated now, but Alex and Kyle are graduates of the Harrington School of Communications and the Film Media program at the University of Rhode Island. So they're involved on this expedition, not as scientists or engineers or oceanographers, but as documentarians, filmmakers, essentially. So there's a lot of ways to get involved. Certainly study hard in math and science, because that's what all students need to do to get into college and also get into the sciences or the engineering fields in college. So study hard and basically keep working hard so that you can do well in school and that you can pursue your goals. Another way to get involved, like we have Shannon and Tiffany out here, is become a teacher. So we have the Rhode Island Teacher at Sea program. We would love to do educational programming at URI, and we love to basically work with teachers and their students to get them excited about real science. So at the Graduate School of Oceanography, we're always involved in field-based research, going out to sea, and now through the Inner Space Center, broadcasting into classrooms. So teachers can now take part, which is great. Back to you.
It is great, and we're so happy to have them here. They seem like they've been having fun.
Yeah.
We're really glad you came with us.
And we'll talk to them at the next show.
So that's just about our time. I want to thank all of our guests on the show today and our viewers at home as well. We're going to be continuing to broadcast live on innerspacecenter.org/RIREX, and we have 2 more scheduled shows today at 1 and at 7. Those will be broadcast on Rhode Island PBS and also online on our website. I also want to remind all of our VIP users to keep asking questions. We love to answer them. And if you're on social media, you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. We'll answer those questions as well. Thanks so much for joining us, and continue to explore with us.